Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Media Derby. For those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share if you can, drop your comments down below. For those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the other podcasting platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review if you can. Every little helps and is all appreciated. All right, let's get into our Euros chat then, Jonts. England won, Serbia 0 in the first group game of the Euros 2024. It was a game of two halves, pardon the pun and the cliche, but it really was. The first half, England, I think people are overselling this. England were like dominant and crazy, and they had more of the ball. They dominated the ball, and Serbia was sitting deep. I think it was kind of by design that was the case. I think Serbia didn't try and press or do anything kind of proactive in that first half. So England had a lot more of the ball. I don't think we had loads of chances. I think Kyle Walker had one where he kind of shot crossed it quickly after the Bellingham goal. But other than that, I think there wasn't too much goal mouth action. And then, second half, Serbia, their manager went for it. He brought on loads of subs early on. And
Tadic
they kind of,
Tadic,
Ilic looked really good as well, the midfielder. Jovic came on and put himself about. And Serbia completely flipped the script and had England sitting deep for almost the whole second half. And the Kane header on the bar was kind of a great save by the goalie, by the way, Ratchkovic. Was kind of against the run of play. There wasn't too much coming from England's attack. But what did you make, first of all, of the performance as a whole? And are you worried about that second half performance? Because if you listen to the media right now, it's kind of hypercritical.
Negative.
There's not too many people. There's a few people I see who keep saying, oh, don't forget we won. England won 1-0. But there's a lot of criticism about the performance. So, are you worried about that second half?
Not worried per se. I think it was an experiment, right? We obviously saw Trent start in the centre midfield position. I think, I'll be honest with you, he had a terrible game from my point of view. He was very wasteful. And, the whole sentiment that Gary Neville put around, like, if it was France, if it was Brazil or Argentina, they'd build the team around him and find a way to get him in. No. They wouldn't. They really, really wouldn't, right? Like, you can't just be an absolute wonder of a right foot and be able to put balls into dangerous positions and do absolutely nothing else, because Kevin De Bruyne can do other things as well. He can shoot, he can pass, he defends quite well, he runs around, he's an engine. He does a lot, right? Building your team around somebody who offers not just an absolute wonder of a right foot, but also a couple of other things too, fine. But this whole narrative of Trent, find a way to get him into the team is rubbish. I'm sorry to say he's not that level for us to be trying to force someone into the team like that, especially when he's given performances like he was yesterday, where he's given the ball away a lot, a couple of good passes here and there and some cross-field pingers and stuff like that. But nah, we can't be doing that. So I think from my perspective, it was an experiment. I think as a result of it, we didn't play all that well. Even in the first half, where we did have quite a lot of possession of the ball, many of the times where we didn't have possession of the ball, it came because of a silly mistake from somebody like Trent. So genuinely, I don't read too much into it. I think if we're going to do that kind of performance against Serbia and still come out and win, fine. But we need to start figuring out how we're going to play, because I'll be honest with you, that experiment didn't go well for me, from my point of view, from a lot of different angles, right? Foden on the left-hand side, again, ineffective, right? Not very much coming from that area. He's not demanding to get on the ball. He's not really doing anything, right? It's players like Bellingham that are really pulling us up, by in this case, just on his own to get us over the line. So, I'm not going to buy in too much to the hypercritical thing, because I don't think it was necessarily like a confirmed team where we were like, this is the team that's going to win us the Euros, right? I think it was an experiment, so I can understand and kind of allow for not a great performance. But I do think we're going to have to find out how we want to play and stick to a way of playing consistently from here on out. And if we line up with Trent again in that position, and we line up with Foden on the left-hand side again, and we don't perform well again, then we've got to start asking questions of like, why are you continuing to do this, Southgate? Right? So, I'm not putting too much stock into one game on its own, But if we see continuous patterns of what he's trying to do here, and it ends up with bad performances and scraping wins over teams that we should beat comfortably, then I do think questions need to be asked. The issue you've got in tournament football is you ain't got a lot of opportunities. You get a couple of games here and there, and if you don't play well, you're out. And going out in the group stages would be disastrous for us, right? Even going out early in the knockout stages would be disastrous for us. So, yeah, not too much in this one, but if I see him line up like that again and we play poorly, then I do think questions need to be asked. What about you? You think it's the world is falling, the sky is falling right now?
Nah, I mean, first of all, my expectations for this team are to play like that. Like I can't recall too many England performances where from start to finish we've absolutely dazzled. Like it just doesn't happen. It's very much a team that performs in moments and has so much quality that are able to kind of basically pull us out the mire if the team's not working as a unit. And I think it's harsh to go in on the team this much after the first game because probably Serbia are the hardest group, team in this group. If we're going to be completely honest, Denmark are decent, but you saw them against Slovenia the other day. I would say Slovenia might be the third best, and then Denmark might be the worst in terms of how they performed in this first game week. So I think no one needs to press all the panic buttons or whatever. But if you are not a Southgate outer, but if you're a Southgate doubter, let's say, this is just adds a little bit more evidence to what you already kind of know about him as a manager and the way he sets up his team. Because I definitely do think, quote that Ten Hag came out with, because I think he was doing, was it Dutch TV, also covering or some sort of TV punditry's job, which I thought was funny that he did that in the first place. But he said kind of Southgate gets the goal 1-0 up and then he sits back and retreats and he kind of goes into his shell and does whatever. Which, to be honest, is a fair criticism. I think that's how a lot of us would say Southgate manages. He very rarely gets a goal and then keeps going and gets a second and a third and a fourth. It's just ironic to come from Ten Hag because he's been his managerial performance hasn't been the greatest in this past season. But yeah, I was not shocked to see the first half go the way that it did. I feel like there were definitely issues. I think you might be being slightly harsh on Trent. I don't think he was great. I don't think he was like terrible. I just think it's just he's not an 8. I think that the truth of the matter, he's not an 8 or a 6 or he's not a midfielder.
He's not a central player.
Yeah, he's not a central player.
I wouldn't want to see him in a central part of the pitch at all.
No. And I remember when speaking to football coaches and different people that are involved in the game, they always talk a lot about how the midfield is one of the hardest positions to play because you've always got a blind spot. Like if you're in defense or in goal, you're pretty much not going to have.
You play in front, you see left, everything right, in front, and that's it.
Exactly, yeah. And a midfielder has to check his mirrors. Big up, filthy fellas. He needs to check his mirrors. They always need to look, and I think that was clear in that game yesterday. Every time he was collecting the ball and he was back to the opposition, he had no clue what was going on around him. He wasn't scanning, he wasn't checking. He was just like a completely a duck out of water. He was just not. You could tell it wasn't his instinct to do that. And I think eventually, as many people have said, if we persevere with this midfield, Trent in midfield, it's going to come back and kill us. Because a better team, a more threatening team, a team that presses even more front foot than Serbia, which I don't think is their normal game, right? Let's say it's even a Holland or a Germany under Nagelsmann, for example, yeah, with Wirtz and Musiala and these young whippersnappers coming up and pressing him. He stands no chance. He's
going to get dispossessed in our third, in the closest third to the England goal, and they're going to punish us for it. And this is exactly the criticism I have of him, which is attention span. He's got an attention span like Ramsdale at this point, where He touches the ball. It's a bit of a crap touch. He thinks no one's around him. Someone just comes in and nicks the ball off of him, right? Or he doesn't know where his own players are, misplaces a pass to them. And I think if you contrast that with the way Bellingham played yesterday, every single time he got the ball, if he didn't know what was behind him, he at least had the strength to quickly turn. And the amount of times that I saw him get the ball and then turn a man who went flying past him the other way and completely swivel in the opposite direction, that is how you play a central position, or particularly a midfield central position. And I think you saw the major differences in what a central position has to do. But if you looked at Bellingham and if you looked at Trent yesterday, and I'll be honest with you, like, it makes way more sense for me to have Bellingham sit in that second in that 8 role next to Rice with that ability to do that, right? And that's the same thing for Kobe, right? Kobe is able to swivel. He's able to look around him. He's able to get out of tight spaces. And that's what you want from that player that's going to be next to Rice, right? He's able to progress the ball up the pitch afterwards. So he's going to beat a man very quickly and then play one forward. Now, with Trent, it only makes sense if you play Trent in this deep lying kind of role. If you've got two midfielders in front of him who are running all over the place and will get back as much as they get forward, it doesn't make sense to have him sat next to Rice, who's getting isolated by himself and having to do pretty much all of the defensive work and the awareness work, and just let him spray balls to who? Because at the end of the day, like, it doesn't make any sense. I'd rather see Bellingham pulled back a little bit, stick Foden in front of him, and then let Gordon go on the left-hand side and just run at people. Because what I'm not seeing from Foden right now is going down the wing. We have wingers for a reason. Saka yesterday caused so many problems for that left back. And you made a funny point, which is like, how have people not figured out what Saka does at this point, right? But he's continually is able to do that and cause massive amounts of problems for these left backs. So what do you want to do? Do you want to have Foden coming in and just encroaching on the space that Bellingham's creating in that kind of 10 role? Or do you want a Gordon who's going to run for it down the touchline and get to the byline and cross one in for Harry Kane, for example, to get his head on? Because in another day, goalkeeper don't make that save and that goes in. So it's clear from my point of view, or Bellingham, right? Like, all of our goals, a lot of our goals are going to come from wingers getting to the byline, cutting one back or crossing one over the top for Kane to get onto, or for Bellingham to get onto, or for Foden in this case to like Odegaard one, stroke one into the back, into the bottom right corner, right? That's going to make sense. But what we're doing here, I don't know why you'd play Trent if you're not going to have Saka, Kane, and then someone like Gordon trying to get in behind players, or like a Rashford, for example, or somebody else like a Watkins. That's where it makes sense. Protect him with two players in front of him, get him the ball, let him have a couple of blockers in front of him, and let him spray balls out to the left-hand side, right-hand side, and over the top. But in this case, it doesn't make any sense to have him playing these balls to who? Because at the end of the day, Saka prefers to get it into feet, right? Do a couple of shimmies here and there and then get to the byline. Foden just wants to cut inside and be a 10, basically. So, yeah, like, I'm not going to blame Trent too much, but this system that we're playing doesn't suit him, first of all. And if we do have to get to a point where we play a system specifically built for Trent, I think we're not going to play our best football. I think there is a better kind of football we can be playing with him, unfortunately, not on the pitch, right? So that's just my main thing. I'm not saying that Trent is the worst player ever, but this system doesn't suit him. He needs a system built around his abilities, which are, he only needs to be able to look one way. He shouldn't have to worry about anyone behind him, anyone from left or right. He just needs to get the ball, have a bunch of flipping offensive linemen in front of him, and let him just spray balls over left and right.
The thing about it, right, and I feel a bit bad for him because he's a quality player and he has lots and lots of huge plus points as a player, and you can see what he's achieved already at that young age, right? So I'm not trying to do the Scouse hate stuff on him, but I do think because people have hammered him so hard for the defensive work, which I think sometimes has gone over the top. Don't get me wrong, I think he's poor defensively, but I don't think it's because he can't defend. I think it's because he doesn't want to. So I distinguish that and think it's not the same level of criticism. When you're telling someone who can't do something and you're hammering them all the time, then I feel like, okay, maybe that's going over the top or whatever. But with Trent, I feel like people hammer him because they know he can do it. We've seen him defend at different points, and he's shown ability to do it. But I think because people believe he can't do it, they think this right back Trent stuff needs to end and he needs to go in midfield. What I would implore those people to think about is a midfielder needs to defend too. So when you put him in midfield, it's not like he doesn't need to defend, and that's gonna unless you're look, guys. Even at this point, if you looking for a striker, you're still asking your striker to track back and do stuff. So there is no position on the field that exists anymore where it's totally okay to not defend. So what you need to do is think about a system that's going to actually protect Trent as much as possible and not make him have to defend it, and make him defend the least bit possible, which unfortunately for Southgate and this setup is the actual way that Klopp was playing in, which was at right back, and then you have two midfielders who've got engines, right? The best Liverpool that we've seen in 30, 40 years or whatever is literally the one with Trent at right back, Henderson and Wijnaldum in midfield, who've got three lungs, Park Ji-sung, big him up, along them lines, just running up and down, and covering him when he goes forward. And I actually think that Rice and Bellingham can do that. And it's not going to take away anything from Bellingham if you play him as an 8. It won't. There's plenty of 8s that have been box to box that have gone, and he's got the energy and the physicality to be able to do that. And it shouldn't take away from his ability to ghost in like he did yesterday and score headers and score goals. You've seen Lampard originally, right? The Chelsea Lampard was in an 8, and he would ghost into that edge of the box, come in and score goals. And I know they experimented later with Drogba, with Frank behind him as like kind of an attacking midfielder, but originally he was an 8, and with Ballack and Makaleli behind them. So I can't see why we can't do that with our current midfield. And if you want to get Trent in there, get him in at right back. And I certainly think against Serbia they could have done that. There was no threat going over the top over Walker's shoulder. You didn't need to play Walker at right back yesterday. You just didn't. You could have played Trent at right back and he would have been okay. But I get it, against Mbappe or against someone where there's a legitimate threat over the top. I understand why you might just have to sit Trent out for that game. Unfortunately, that's just the case. You can't play him in that game, but he can play against other ones where him picking the lock from right back is actually really effective. But yeah, I just think it's not right now. The setup's not right. But I'm going to give Southgate a bly for it. I'm not going to hammer him for it. This squad is massively different compared to all the other squads he's had. It wasn't going to just like work perfectly straight away and be seamless. And if you're going to test things out, I agree with you. You try and test them out in friendlies. But if not, the first few games, as long as you're not playing one of the big boys, you've got that license to do it. And
we have the benefit of not the strongest group. So
yeah, exactly.
I get it, but
I think the thing we should talk about though, more on I think Trent thing is kind of not really his fault. It's a system, like you said. But we can put some question marks on Kane and Foden yesterday because those two were pretty smelly. Foden in particular, he stunk up the joint. I don't know what he was doing. Like he was kind of ghosting almost right next to Saka at one point, like on the right hand side. What the hell are you doing there when you're supposed to be a left winger? And I just feel like in the second half in particular, he didn't show any of the skill set and the abilities that we see him at City, which is when you play the ball up to him, he's press resistant, he can wriggle out of problems. He just lost the ball loads. And he was just trying to shift it really quickly and just losing the ball in stupid ways. And I don't think he got too much coverage in terms of people criticizing or asking questions of him. And I feel like people might be missing the trick. What did you think of Kane and Foden's games in particular?
I'm going to give Kane a bly, right? And this is with the context that I was in the group chat yesterday saying, look at the difference in sentiment between Kane when he does nothing versus Haaland in the Premier League when he does nothing, right? They were saying, oh, all it takes is one touch for Kane and he'll get a goal. We don't need to worry about him. He doesn't need to do anything else. He just needs to, be there. And if he gets an opportunity, he'll put one in the back of the net, right? Whereas with Haaland, it's, he's a League Two player. He doesn't do anything apart from offer you that one chance. If you get one, he's going to put it in the back of the net. So despite that context, I genuinely don't think Kane had a terrible game, right? I think he had really one major opportunity, which if we're going to be harsh to him, he needs to put far away from the goalkeeper. I don't understand why he heads it straight into the goalkeeper because it's pretty much uncontested at that point, right? But for the most part, he got it on target and the goalkeeper pulled off an amazing save. So I can't blame him too much for that, right? So from that point of view, other than that, he didn't get a whole lot of opportunities, right? He didn't really get the ball into feet very often. That's not really the way that we were playing yesterday. So I can't blame him all that much for that, right? Because the one opportunity that he did have, he did all right, right? But for Foden, again, I don't know if it's a system problem or a Foden problem or whatever it is, but Foden on the left wing in a non-Man City system just does not work, man. He's not a winger, right? Like if you want him to be playing in that position, you have to accept that he's not going to go to the byline. He's not going to really use that left-hand side channel all that much. He's going to cut in. He's going to play the ball. He's going to essentially try and get into the center of the pitch and try and thread balls like Odegaard type of player. And that's not what we need in this system. That's not what we need in this team. So the system doesn't flatter him. He's not a good left winger in this system. In Man City's system, he can maybe play that because really their wingers aren't really wingers, right? For the most part, they're kind of more central than a winger and they don't really use those channels all that much, right? They let the left back and right back, if they need to, get into positions. But for the most part, they're all floating around, really just playing balls into feet over and over again, short passes here, there and everywhere. Under Southgate's system, that's not how we're going to play, right? Rice and Bellingham are not really ball to feet, tiki-taka types of players. So he's not really going to fit in there. So he's not really going to play as a left winger. We're going to have 2 10s essentially, and then Saka just on the right-hand side by himself. So we're really not using that channel at all. Whereas in the friendly, I can't remember who it was against, but in the friendly where Gordon was playing, he didn't get a goal or an assist, but he was causing real problems for that right back, the same way that Saka was causing real problems for the left back yesterday. And that's what you want. Let's occupy some of that left back and right back, keep them out on the wings, let people like Bellingham float into the box if he needs to, get headers, let Kane use his size, etc., etc. But, I'm not going to put all of it on Foden, but he was not good yesterday. He clearly hasn't figured out how to adapt to a left wing role in a non-Pep system. And at the same time, this is not a system that I think is ever going to benefit him, is ever going to really show him as being a great player. Because, he's not Messi. As much as we want to say that he's the most talented English player we've ever seen, he's not Messi, right? You can't stick him anywhere on the pitch and just give him the ball and he's going to dribble past 100 man. He's not. He needs some catering to make him really shine. And the system that we did yesterday was not the right catering to let him shine, from my point of view. I might be being harsh, but Foden ain't going to play his best football in that system that we were playing yesterday. And this is where some sacrifices might have to be made, right? If you really like Bellingham in that 10 role, maybe you just can't play Foden, man. Maybe you've got to play Gordon. Foden rides bench for a little bit, right? And just like you said, if we're playing a France or if we're playing a specific team where having a Foden in the team makes more sense as the 10, then let's do that, right? But this style that we played yesterday, it's not going to work. And I'm tired of hearing that Foden can play wherever and he's just the best player ever. No, he needs to play in the 10 and ideally against a low block type of team where he's going to be able to unlock little through balls here and there. But I don't want to see him against these teams and I don't want to see him in a left wing role.
Yeah, I'm actually more critical because I think the point you're making. I get it. There's some things that are outside of his control, and whether he probably doesn't want to play left wing and Southgate's just putting him there, I don't know. But I'm sorry, in these kind of moments, this is when your big stars need to rise. Your Bellingham's, Foden, Kane, right? Everyone's been cracking on with that same played out point all the time, saying, "Oh, we got the best player in the Premier League, the best player in the Bundesliga, the best player in La Liga." And I'll be real, only the best player in La Liga rose, and a player who wasn't touted as one of the best players in the league last season, Saka as well. Like, I know we rate Saka very highly, but on form wise, he's definitely had better seasons, right? Like, he wasn't in the conversation for best player in the league last season, and he shone more than Foden did, and Bellingham shone. And I just think Foden needs to show me something, because there are moments definitely in the league where I feel like he's improved and he, was impactful for City and he was probably the best player this season. but I don't think he consistently showed up in big moments in big games. Um, I know he scored a couple goals in the West Ham game in the last game of the season, and that's probably the only one that sticks out in my memory. But I'm thinking Champions League against Real Madrid, he didn't. I know he scored a cracker in the first leg, but I don't remember him doing anything in the second leg. When they needed someone to step up in the cup final, he was basically non-existent. Didn't really turn up at all. And then in big moments previously for England, I've only remembered Saka kind of standing out, Kane standing out. Previously, obviously, it was Sterling. Even I think Rashford's had more kind of explosive moments for England at tournaments than him. So I need him to do something because at the moment it's a lot of chat, like you're saying, and I think the media has kind of almost forced Southgate's hand with both Trent and Foden. This idea that you play Trent regardless, this idea that you play Foden regardless. Look, I agree with you completely. Eze or Gordon would have been way better on that left wing, cutting in with a right foot and doing something. I kind of understand the logic in that Trippier's a right-footed left back, so maybe he was going with Foden because he's a natural left-footed left winger who might go out on the outside. But he literally did not do that once yesterday, so that destroys that theory. So yeah, I just felt like he dropped an absolute stinker yesterday, and had it not been for Bellingham standing up, Saka had a really good game for 60 minutes. I will say he kind of faded after that. Like he got the better of that left back. Yeah, he got better of that left back for the whole first half, and then the beginning of the second half, and then there was a clear moment where he gassed out, and it seemed like he just couldn't get past the left back. But like you said, he's coming back from injury. It's probably just like a fatigue thing. But Saka was good. Bellingham was good. Guehi, top tier. That was a great performance for the least experienced capped defender in that back line. He looked the most assured. I think Stones even had a few shaky moments, but Guehi looked really good, so big him up. But yeah, nothing from Foden. And I agree with you about the Kane thing. I'm being harsh. I don't think he had a great game. But again, I think that goes a bit more to the system because he talked about it after in his post-match and said kind of like he was told he needed to be higher up. He needed to occupy the centre backs. And if you look at it that way, I think he did a decent job. He won loads of fouls. He held up the ball generally pretty well. And like you said, when he had the chance, he was a goalkeeper's fingertips away from making it 2-0. So maybe I'm being harsh on him. But yeah, the build-up was the best player in all these leagues. We wanted to see something. And it was only Bellingham that showed us something in that game. So yeah, a lot to improve on. But let's get into the preview then. England have got Denmark in the second game in the group. They're top right now because Slovenia and Denmark finished 1-1. Christian Eriksen scored. So big him up, United player. I think it was I saw the stat that it was 1,000 days after he collapsed in the last Euros. So big him up massively for that because to address that trauma that he had from the last Euros, the score in the first game of this Euros is a good start. So big up Eriksen for that. But yeah, they didn't look very good in the rest of that game, and Slovenia probably looked like they were going to get the winner if any team was. But they're in joint second and third right now. What do you think is going to happen in that game, John? Do you expect England to get the W? And give us a cheeky prediction as well.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably line up the same. If I know anything about Southgate, is that he's relatively stubborn. So I think we're probably going to line up the same as we did. Unfortunately, right after my whole rant there, I don't think we should, but I think we will. And as a result, I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game for us, at least. But I do see us getting over the line. Right? I think we just got a bit more quality than them. I mean, there's a possibility for an upset because Denmark are not a bad team. They are good, and they are almost always considered to be like a dark horse in these kind of tournaments because they've been able to pull things out of the bag previously. But I think we'll be able to get over the line with them. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 England win. I think it could be a much more convincing performance if we just play maybe not all the stars, but the best system for our team. So if we do that, I could see it being a 3-0. But I just don't think we'll do that. So I'll go for a 2-1 England win, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game. I don't think it's going to be an exciting game either.
Yeah. It's so hard predicting England games. it's a very familiar feeling. I'm feeling from the season with United, not knowing which team's going to turn up, and it's kind of a travesty considering all the quality players England have in comparison to our squad at the moment. But I can see it going all those ways. I can see, a 0-0 ball draw like we saw against Scotland in the last Euros, or like we saw against USA in the last World Cup. I can see that happening. I can see us nicking another 1-0 win like we just did against Serbia, and it being like a game of moments, and one of the big guys steps up. But I could also just see, against the Scandinavian teams, we've generally been okay in the last Euros and, in the last World Cup. We've played Sweden, Denmark a few times and come out, victors in all of those. So I could see it also being like 2-0. I don't think it will be a thumping. I do think Denmark have looked a bit stinky recently, but I don't think they'll get hammered. I think they've got enough quality to keep it tight. But I agree with you. I think he's going to go with the same team. I don't think he'll make any changes. And I think we'll see something similar. And so I'm going to go England 1-0. I don't know if it will be Bellingham again, but it will be a moment of brilliance from someone or a penalty that will get England across the line. And if they do win, they're through. They'll qualify, and I'm pretty sure they'll qualify top as well now because of that last draw between these two. So, yeah, I think it will be I think this is just like the way tournament football goes. I'm not checking on the France score right now, but it was 1-0 and it was a pretty tight game last I saw. And apart from Germany, Scotland, where I feel like Scotland also shot themselves a bit in the foot and were pretty abysmal in that game, most games have been fairly lively and fairly tight, and I think a lot of the group stages will be like that. So I'm expecting, England 1-0. And let's say I'm going to go with Saka. Saka's going to score a goal in this one. And England are going to get just over the line. But yeah, you know what? Surprise me. Come on, England. Go out there and absolutely hammer them. That would be lovely. Wouldn't be bad if, Rasmus got a cheeky goal as well to just keep his confidence going. But as long as England win, I'm all good.